Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports with Frank podcast. Another weekend preview today, and also just before recording a big transfer news hit, so we're going to talk about that as well. And of course, after game of the week, that this week is going to be two games actually that I think are going to be extremely interesting, going into now the fifth game of the Bundesliga since returning after the COVID-19 pandemic break. So interesting episode, a lot to talk about. Let's get into right away. This is a Sports with Frank podcast. I'm Francesco. Let's do this. Right, let's get into it right away. Right before I started recording, I'm recording this on a Thursday, a big news hit coming from Germany with the sport journal Bild that has come out and said that apparently Timo Werner is very close to joining Chelsea. Now this comes as a bit of a shock because Chelsea were never in the conversation for signing Werner. There was a lot of reports that were suggesting he was basically already a Liverpool player. I read that he apparently already had a meeting via Skype with Jurgen Klopp, regarding joining Liverpool as soon as the transfer windows open. And it seemed like Liverpool were ready to get to the player by paying for his release clause, bringing him into Anfield. And to be honest, right away, I talked about this in a couple of episodes ago when we went over some transfer rumors, and I didn't really see the fit in the sense that I think Liverpool already has an incredible front three, so I didn't really see how he would fit there. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, in a team like Liverpool, you need to have certain level players, even to change some every now and then. So I wouldn't have been surprised if Werner ended up there. There were other reports in Italy saying that Werner was also a target for Inter Milan, especially if Lautaro Martinez were to be transferred to Barcelona, although that seems unlikely. Barcelona is not doing well financially apparently, so I don't think that will ever come true. So probably Inter wouldn't have gone for Werner eventually, but Chelsea were definitely not in the conversation. And this news just hit, and the report is Chelsea will pay the 60 million euros transfer fee or his release clause, and it's going to give the player a 10 million a year salary. Now, let's just talk about what Werner would be for Chelsea, right? Chelsea, in my opinion, is a team that doesn't need a striker. They have Tammy Abraham, which of course is not the best striker in the world, and you probably can improve there. But let's be honest, for what Chelsea are doing right now, and with the competition in the Premier League, I don't know if they can think about winning right away, and that includes Europe as well. And I think they are way behind in some other parts of the pitch. For example, centre backs. This is a team that you have Zuma that really hasn't recovered after the many injuries he went through. You have Anderson that hasn't really been as consistent. He was pretty good with Conte, but already with Sarri he started not seeing the field as much, and it's eventually it's more of a background player for them now. And then they have some projects like Tomori. He's shown some good signs, but still a pretty young centre back, and we know that centre backs come to their perfect form and their peaks much later on compared to other positions. And then you have Rudiger, another guy that's come back from a big time injury with rupturing his ACL a couple of years ago. And he's a solid player, but I think Chelsea, they should focus on their defense more than they should do on their attacking side of the ball. However, I think like when it comes to a player like Timo Werner at that price, especially with the economics after the COVID-19 pandemic, I think that's a good price for a striker that has an age that if it doesn't work out, even though he's showing incredible signs of being probably a good player for a long time, but let's say it doesn't work out, you pay 60 million now that in 2 days market usually are not that much money anymore. After the pandemic, they might be a bit more, but eventually you can sell this guy back in a few years and probably make the same amount of money. Very similar to what they did with Morata. Morata, came over from Madrid for a high fee. I think it was in the range of the 60 million pounds. It didn't work out for them. They gave it to Atletico Madrid that have an option to buy, and I think it's already been converted to an obligation to buy this summer for him to stay at Atletico Madrid for basically the same price. They actually made a profit in that transaction. for a player that didn't really perform for them at all. So I can see them like going for this player, especially at this moment in time, because remember that Chelsea didn't have the chance to make any transfer in the past two transfer windows, summer and the winter one. They did buy Ziyech from Ajax during the winter window, but of course they were not allowed to transfer him in, so he's gonna come in whenever he's allowed. He's not going to be allowed to play for the rest of this current season, but he's probably going to move to Chelsea, in the 1st of July, because we know that in the Netherlands the league games have been suspended. So that was their other big transfer of this, post transfer market ban that they had due to certain operations and certain transactions they made with young players. So this is a team that hadn't spent that much for quite a while now. And we know how in today's market, every team, especially this caliber, they have a lot of money every season. So if you give this teams like this the chance to not spend, they're probably going to come back and have what they need. So Chelsea is a team that doesn't really care about spending this much in this particular time in our history, because they have that kind of capital saved from not spending a year ago. So they bring in this player that, in my opinion, fits perfectly with the Premier League, especially because this is a guy that's best suited when he has a lot of space in front of him. We all know how the Premier League is the kind of league where players that are able, with their speed, to get forward, they perform much better than other leagues. Just take Salah, for instance, a guy that in the Premier League has been amazing, entered the conversation to be one of the best players in the world. He does that now, but if you look back at what he was doing in Roma, for example, before going to Liverpool, he was a great player already. You could tell that he had, what it took to be great, but he couldn't really, be as effective as he is in the Prem, because tactical, the way the games work in Italy is much different. But in the Prem, he's exploding. And Werner, even though it's a kind of a different player, has very similar characteristics compared to Mo Salah. So I think this is a guy that is going to definitely make an impact. But in a team like Chelsea, I struggle to see where he could actually play. He's probably going to take the place of Tammy Abraham. But as I said, I don't think he is the best striker in the Prem by any stretch of the imagination. But I think he is perfect for the type of play that Lampard is going for with Chelsea. And it's also shown by the fact that Giroud has also been, an important piece there, because that's the kind of striker that seems to be better suited to play the kind of style that Lampard wants to play. So a big physical striker that has a presence in the penalty area, can go up and get it with his head. Werner, on the other hand, is the opposite kind of player, especially for strikers. He's the quick one. He beats you with his speed, not with his physical abilities. So it will be definitely interesting to see how Lampard works around his team to make him fit. Because if you consider that Chelsea could have, could play with a 4-2-3-1, with Jorginho and Kante in front of the defense, so giving a lot of protection to that defense, and then Mason Mount right behind Werner, and then you have Pulisic and Ziyech on the sides. And of course, Chelsea has other young players, like you love to check another player that could actually be extremely efficient in the 4-2-3-1, like the one that could be played with Werner there. That they had Otsonaji, another incredible player in my opinion. Among the young players, English young players, I think he is probably the one with the best future, winger. So we'll see how Lampard plays him in, but it's definitely an interesting transfer for the team itself, because, as I said, I don't see it now, but I think, a player like Lampard that has been coached by several greats of coaching, I think he's going to be able to find this position. So overall, I think financially it's a great move for Chelsea, because you take in a guy that could be worth twice as much if you ever wanted to resell him in the future, and probably going to stick to that price tag even if he doesn't do as well as people imagine he will. And also, technically, from a tactical point of view, I'm not sure it's going to be the best fit, but I think the quality he has and the way he could actually fit very, very well in the Prem as a league, I think will make him extremely valuable for Chelsea. We'll see how Lampard goes about it. He might just make something up in a way that allows him to play him with another physical striker like Abraham. That's also a possibility. We'll see. But definitely, I wanted to talk about this because I think this is a win-win for everyone. Also for Werner, because you're going from Leipzig, a good team. They're doing well in the Champions League this year, but realistically, they're not going to be consistent over the years. So I don't think there was any chance for him to stay there. The other option, as I said, Liverpool, a team where you probably would have had to fight much more for that position, as a starting 11 striker. And also, the salary he's getting at Chelsea is probably the highest he could get in any other, going to any other team. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what happens, once he come over. And I think Chelsea, with this addition, could actually be an interesting team to surprise many in next year's Premier League. It's all about Manchester City, really. If Manchester City get banned from Champions League, they're probably going to lose several players, because we know how important playing in the Champions League is for any player. And even if it's Manchester City, I don't think they'll have the power to keep the majority of the big stars around. And Liverpool is a team that, is doing amazing this year. It did amazing last year, so they're probably going to be very good next year as well. But at the same time, Leicester won this league a few years ago, even playing against giants like Manchester City and Chelsea. Back then when Chelsea was actually, one of the most important teams in Europe in terms of, every year starting to be, favorite for many competitions. So I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea, with this addition actually gets over the edge. But as I said at the beginning, I think they should focus very much on improving in their centre-back spots, because I think right now that's probably the weakness that they have. And bringing in Timo Werner sets you up very nicely as your striker, and also the chance for him to play on the wing if needed be. So I think centre-back is where they have to go for, and I think if they manage to get a good one there, they will be, in a pretty good position to surprise people next year. Right, now that we had that out of the way, let's talk about some games. Every week, it seems like there is always, a nice game to watch, to see young talent, to see possible future superstars, and also to see some nice football, because overall, this Bundesliga surprised me a lot for how fun it is to watch, even games that on paper may not be, as good, or may not give you that chill when you look at the standings or when you look at the fixture. But I think it's surprising how well they're playing even after this long break, and how fun it is to watch. So for this week, there is not one but two games of the week. So let's get into the first one. My first game of the week this week is definitely Bayer Leverkusen against Bayern Munich. Now, Bayer Leverkusen is a team that we've been talking about quite a lot on this podcast, especially because, Kai Havertz right now is one of my favorite players to watch. And I talked about him more in depth. You can go and check it out in previous podcasts. And I think this is the kind of game where he can shine and show the world, because it's well known that some of the teams in the Bundesliga are not, as good as the top ones. So Kai Havertz so far has been extremely good every game he played. Even the ones where Leverkusen lost, he was actually the best player on the pitch. And, it's time now to show what he can do against big-time competition like Bayern Munich is. Bayern Munich is a team that has everything it takes, to win this league, and they will do that. I'm pretty certain. I mean, there is still games left. The points are not that much, but 7 points at this particular time against this type of team like Bayern Munich, I don't think it's feasible for Dortmund to catch up. But Bayern are showing that you can play with the same players over and over again and not lose a bit, because that's what they've been doing since going back. And they had pretty tough matchups, especially after the Borussia Dortmund. However, I think right here what's important about this game is that Bayern is going to face a team in Leverkusen that don't really have, yes, they have to stay up there to get a spot in the Champions League, and that's very important for them. But honestly, going into this game, Leverkusen is not favored at all. Bayern goes in, has the big team that has, it's the Goliath, facing against a Leverkusen team that in the story will be David, that it's, has no pressure whatsoever. No pressure, honestly. They could lose this game and nobody would be surprised. But if they win, that's a big statement. And I think something that, in the other big game Bayern had before against Dortmund, we talked about this, how I was so disappointed in what Dortmund managed to do against Bayern, because I felt like they went into the game showing how scared they were about losing, because they knew that was the game that probably was going to decide the rest of their season. And I think if Dortmund went in the game with a different approach, I think the game could have ended much differently than what it did. I don't know if they would have won, but I'm pretty sure they would have put a much better fight up than what they did. Because at the end of the day, against a team like Bayern, if you don't have that killer instinct, you're never gonna come out with a win. And as I said, when a team goes in a game like this, that's still an important game for German league, because those are two extremely important teams all around. But at the same time, if Leverkusen knows that if they lose, then everybody expected them to lose, it's a different story. And for a guy like Kai Havertz, you go into this game knowing that this is a big stage where you can prove yourself and show everybody that you can actually perform at high level even against top competition. So I'm definitely looking forward to this game, because at the end of the day, the league is already decided. As I said, most likely Bayern are going to win. But this doesn't mean that there is no time for players to shine. And a game against Bayern is always going to be a reason for top level players and young talent to come up and show everyone what they're capable of. And then you have Bayern Munich, as I've just talked about them, how good they are. And I think they go into this game knowing that they're the better team, knowing that they're 7 points ahead. Really, there's no pressure for them to do well. But it's a team that they still have about a month and a half to go before they play in their Champions League games again. And I don't think they want to miss a bit. This is a team that wants to show off every chance they have, because I think they strongly believe they have a chance to win the Champions League in August. And I think they want to, showcase what their players can do, and that they're going to be a threat whenever European football comes back. So overall, very interesting game. The youth of Leverkusen against the solidity of Bayern Munich. I'm gonna watch this game very closely. This is in the first window, so it's gonna be starting early in the afternoon on Saturday. So I suggest everybody tunes in and watch this, because I'm telling you, this could be the game where Kai Havertz definitely steps in the big boys league and show everyone why he is the future of Germany. I believe this is the guy that the national team will basically base their future on. And I think this game is going to prove that he can play at that kind of level already at his age. Now, my second game of the week, it's the Hertha Berlin Borussia Dortmund game. I talked about Hertha in Monday's podcast because I've been impressed by the way they come back after this break due to COVID-19 and how well they've been playing. A team like Hertha is a team that every year, they start with the ambition of staying in the Bundesliga, and if something happens, better. If they manage to get to a European spot, that's better. But they don't really start the season with the idea of being competitive at higher level in the table. However, this year they were doing so badly before this whole virus thing that majority of supporters were not believing at all that they could be where they are now. And that's because this is a team that had changed 4 coaches over the course of one season. I've never seen that before. But they finally brought in the right guy in Labadia. Again, I mentioned this the other day. He is the second winningest coach in the Bundesliga right now, currently coaching a team. So this is a guy that's, you bring in his assurance to be at least solid and at least consistent. And that's definitely what they've been in the last 4 games. Hertha is a team that, they spent big. In January, they brought in Piontek from Milan. It was supposed to be the number 9 that would take them, they would avoid relegation with him. And now he's not even playing. They're still going with the Ibisevic, a staple of the Bundesliga. This guy's 38, I believe. And he's been, a sure thing in the Bundesliga for years. It was Hoffenheim before, now Hertha. And they have another guy that's very interesting, and I'll be watching very closely, and that's Matheus Cunha. Matheus Cunha was a Lipsia player. Lipsia didn't believe in him. There were rumors of him not being committed, during training. So he was sent to Berlin, and even his first part of the season wasn't as good. But since the return of Bundesliga, he's been extremely consistent, and his game has been on fire. So overall, very solid team, very solid coach, and I expect him to give an extremely, nice and fun performance this week against Dortmund as well. And Dortmund, I don't know, man. I mean, I was very high on Dortmund going to the Bayern game. I really believed they could win. I don't know why the bench scenario where they could actually put talented players from their bench with 4 substitutions was something that gave me a lot of confidence that they could win that game. And we know that that didn't happen. And I talked about how disappointed I was about their performance. And I don't know, I mean, I watched the game against Paderborn this past weekend actually. And yes, they destroyed them, but to be honest, first of all, Paderborn wasn't the best opposition for them at all. He's the worst team in the Bundesliga. I'm pretty sure they already gave up. They know they're going to go back to Zweite, and I don't see them putting much of an effort there. I think it was more a situation of Dortmund going ahead by a large margin and then kind of sitting down and let the other team play, and then they got almost caught and then eventually ran away with the victory. But I didn't really see this nice flow that I saw in the first game they had back. I remember that game against Schalke, they played amazingly. And I honestly thought that that was the way they were going to play from now until the end of the season. I've talked about how, that I'm a fan of Julian Favre, the coach for Borussia Dortmund, and I'm being disappointed. I think the team has kind of, after that game against Bayern, I don't think they're going to recover very well because they knew that was the chance they had to get back to the top, to get closer to Bayern and to fight for that title. Because let's be honest, they don't have anything left. They're out of the Champions League. They're likely out of the Bundesliga race. They're not in the National Cup anymore. So this is a team that lost that game and basically lost every chance they had to win a trophy this season. And I think that showed in the game they had against Paderborn. As I said, not great competition, but the way they approached the game, I didn't like it. So, Hertha has to go to Westfalenstadion. It's not like, with no supporters, it doesn't have the same impact as it usually has when the yellow wall is there to support the team. But I think Borussia, at this particular moment, they are quite vulnerable and they could be beaten. And I think that Hertha has much higher motivations going into this game because Hertha wins this game, they could actually get in proper contention for a spot in next year Europa League. And it's a team that honestly, considering how they started the season and what they were at the moment that the league was stopped, nobody thought they could actually be there at this point. And now they are, and I think they go into this game knowing that they have to win the more if they want to get there. Against a team like Dortmund, that honestly, what's there left for them to achieve? Like, they're going to get second place. I don't even know if that's, I'm pretty sure the players at the end of the day don't really care if they get to second or fourth because that's not going to make any difference in terms of their Champions League placement or their Champions League points, nothing at all. So I think Dortmund will play their game and they'll do well enough because at the end of the day, this is a good team. So I'm not expecting a blowout by Hertha. But honestly, I'm convinced that Hertha has what it takes to go into Dortmund and take out the 3 points. And then last but not least, Haaland is probably not going to play in this game. And we saw, especially against Bayern, when he came off the pitch, they couldn't really do much. They lacked that presence up top that allows them to move the team forward up the pitch. Against Paderborn, it wasn't needed in terms of scoring goals. But you could tell, especially at the beginning of the game, that they were actually struggling. I mean, Borussia scored all their goals in the second half, but in the first half, they couldn't get the ball forward. I mean, even against lesser competition, the absence of Haaland was hardly felt, and I think it's going to be felt a lot during this game against Hertha because Hertha is a very physical team, and a guy like him could have been, what they needed up front to fight for balls and get the defenders occupied for the wingers to get in space. This one is a late afternoon game, so you can watch the Bayer Leverkusen game first. The Dortmund-Hertha comes after, and I think this could be a fun couple of hours because first you have the young talented team going against the Goliath of the Bundesliga and Bayern Munich, and then after you have this little scrappy team in Hertha that's gonna try and get the 3 points to stay in contention, to give their supporters something to cheer for. To get back to Europe after a couple of years of absence by Hertha. So that would be a certain achievement for them, and I'm honestly glad that Labadie is getting the the recognition he deserves, and I hope he achieves what he wants to achieve with Hertha, so we can have this great coach in the league for another season. So there it is, another episode comes to an end. Honestly, right before starting recording, the Werner news hit, so for today's episode we're not going to have a storyline because that part of the podcast was taken by the transfer news, but I felt like it deserved to be talked about because I think it's a very good signing, and if you think about the environment of the Premier League and what kind of players can fit there, I think Werner has exactly all the characteristics that are necessary for a striker to be extremely good in the Premier League. So we'll see what happens there, but exciting definitely to see him moving to England and try and step it up. And Leipzig has been good, and it was a great environment for him to grow up, but I think Chelsea and the move to England are going to benefit him a lot. And then another weekend ahead of us. This is going to be the last one of only Bundesliga coverage for this podcast because, of course, next week on Thursday, La Liga comes back and there is a banger right away with derby of Seville against Real Betis. We're going to definitely talk about that. The way the podcast is going to be structured from now until the end of this marathon of football games, so it's probably going to be until the end of July. I'm going to be having Monday, Wednesday, Friday, everything will be football. We're going to be covering the four main leagues that are going on now. So Bundesliga, Premier League, La Liga and the Serie A. And of course national cups when they come up. The Serie A, Italian football, is actually coming back with their national cup first. So we're also going to be talking about that on Wednesday. We have two semi-finals. It's AC Milan against Juventus and then Napoli against Inter. Two very interesting games. We'll cover them on Wednesday, and then we just cover games as we go along. There's not going to be a schedule anymore for games because basically we're going to have at least a game every day, and that's extremely exciting for me. And we'll see as we get along how to best handle them and how to best schedule them across the week within our podcasts. So exciting times ahead. I can't wait because this is going to be one of those summers that I never thought that I would get. Summer is always a pain for me because there's no football and you have to wait, and there's all this transfer news, and I just can't wait to just have games. You can watch games and watch actual football. I wish the circumstances were different. I wish that we didn't have to have a virus for this to happen, but at least we have something positive going on in our lives between the virus and the riots in America and all this bad events. I'm glad that at least we have some sports that can cheer us up. So this is all for today. I'll be seeing you again on Monday. We're going to react to this weekend games, and we're going to start introducing some new topics as well about the other leagues. Please, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. A 5-star review will be much appreciated. You can find me on Instagram at sports_with_Frank or on Twitter at sportswithfrank. Until next time, this was the Sports with Frank podcast. I've been Francesco. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.